Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
What is that mindset that is coming up that you're dealing with? Is it fixed? Is it growth? Is it toxic? Is it healthy? What is that limiting belief that you're believing about yourself because of what someone else spoke about you or over you that's preventing you and keeping you from having confidence that you can do this next thing? And there's these emotions come up, so we have to recognize them. We have to give voice to them.
Right.
And if we ignore them, we take all of that emotional baggage with us to that next place. So the transition's really giving you time to be aware of, why am I fearful? There's a root and a reason behind the way we behave, think, or feel. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it's all about. Okay, why am I feeling this? And try to get to the root of it so you can get strengthened, you can find healing for that part of you so that you go into that next place in wholeness and clarity.
We have a pool in the back, a pool and a pond. The pond would be good for you, the Nice Guys on Business. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community, if you've ever gone through a transition in your life, whether it's job, marriage, death of a loved one or spouse or someone that you know, bankruptcy, retirement, yes, even plastic surgery can give you the image of all the things and all the stages and all the parts that you need to go through when you're dealing with a transition. People don't like change, or so I've heard. Or you could learn to embrace change and then find a new perspective. Well, Debi Ronca, she is the transition expert. Her podcast, the Transition Bridge Podcast, shares real stories and real solutions, bringing you content weekly with other experts and people just like you and me, Nice Guy community. Well, there's probably not many people just like me. That's probably good. Top 10% global ranking podcast with over 150 episodes with over 4 years. I'm not surprised. Debi, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business Welcome back to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Hey, Doug, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to being with you today.
So you reminded me, and I should have done a little bit more research. You actually have been on the show before, and I did, until you said that, I'm like, oh gosh, that had to be years ago. So was it right before, right after, right? When was it in your transitions? When was it?
Great question. Well, it was during the midst of when the whole world was going through a transition with COVID. And I came on your podcast, and actually it was the very first podcast I had ever been on. Wow. And we were talking about my book, The Family Letter. And here we are, still connected all of these years. You've helped me and taught me how to produce a podcast, and working with your team has just been incredible.
Well, you have been you've been a valuable client, and you've been what's so nice is that when someone works with you and they embrace the teaching that you have, you feel like the teaching that you have is maybe there's like, oh, okay, well, there's the person that's listening to me. And, to a degree, while maybe I have been the teacher or the mentor when it comes to podcasting, it requires somebody that will actually listen and take the advice and use it. And you've done a great job with that. Just kind of putting it into action, consistently putting out your content for when did you start your podcast? How long ago?
I am going into my 4th year.
Oh my gosh. So going into 4 years, 160 or 170 some odd episodes that are out there right now. And I look through the guest list, and it's transitions of every kind. I tried to name a few of them just there in the intro, but I was really interested in the one that you did on plastic surgery. And yes, there are transitions. I'm going to tell you a little admission. When I was 18 years old, I had a nose job, and it did take me from a period of feeling very self-conscious as a 17-year-old, well, which 17-year-old isn't self-conscious, and having the surgery, and then feeling like that there was a transition in my life, like the butterfly metamorphosizing, and coming out of its cocoon. So there are transitions of every kind. So maybe just share a little bit about what transition is, at least as you define it.
I'm so glad you asked that because I think there's a lot of confusion or misunderstanding about what a transition is in life. It's that new season or new direction. And what I love to help people with is to understand that transition calls you forth into something new and different. And there's a purpose and there's a power within them. And if we don't really understand how to navigate a transition, we can actually miss the purpose and the power that the transition really wants to bring to our life. So I always love the analogy of the bridge. And so, Doug, I look at it as, this bridge that you need to step up on. Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning of stepping into your transition, because transitions, as you said earlier, they're all about change. It's all about uncertainty. That can be really daunting, but the bottom line, it's all movement where it's calling you forth. And we have this choice. Will we embrace it or will we ignore it? And what happens is when we ignore transitions in our life, that's where we become stuck. That's where we become frustrated. I have this process that I use called REAL, REAL, where I help people recognize the symptoms of a transition, evaluate it, align with it, and live it out in wholeness and clarity. And one of the things, Doug, is people don't realize our emotions are speaking. They're trying to alert, they're trying to reveal. So for instance, here's a symptom. If you're constantly frustrated, that's a symptom that's trying to tell you you should be in transition. Transition's trying to call you forth. And you know why you're so frustrated is because you keep saying no to opportunity. You keep shrinking back, staying comfortable instead of embracing something new. So there's this underlying frustration, and it's really you're frustrated at yourself. So there's like so many symptoms that, talk about transition, but it is change, it is movement. And embracing something new and letting go of something old.
I love what you just said, just about, it's transition calling you to step up and step forward. And my mom used to have an expression. She still has it. She's 91 years old and she still brings all these great pearls of wisdom to my world. But she talks about, Doug, you hang long enough and you get used to hanging. And that's part of the frustration that many people have. They get complacent. And they feel like frustration is a part of what they get that they wake up on Monday morning when they're about to go into this job and they get this pang in their chest or stomach that says, I need to find something new. And they don't do it. They just assume that everybody else is miserable. So they should be miserable. They should be miserable too. I want to make a comment about something you said, because I think it's such an important part of why you are so good at doing what you do. And Nice Guy Community understand that I have at least the few years of experience that you might not have with Debi. So I'm saying this from my experience, not just because I've had a 5-minute conversation with her and then can understand this, but you get involved, Debi, with people's highly emotional time, because transition is a highly emotional process that you go through. How can you, maybe the word easily isn't the right word, but how can you help dampen or lessen the emotional attachment that people have as they go through transition, so that they can understand that there is a process, just kind of like grieving is a process. There's the stages of grieving. How do you help people understand that while they still have the emotions going on at the same time? You have to be like, have nerves of steel and patience of a saint to do it.
Oh, it's so true. And what I said earlier about the transitions are the bridges in life that take us from where we currently are to that next season or direction. As we step across that bridge, we get in the middle, which I call the messy middle, and this is where all of the emotions come out. Transitions have this way of magnifying our inner struggles that are already present. But they come up magnified. So if you have fears and insecurities and doubts, as you are processing and trying to make decisions for what is next in your life, they come forth. So what I do, I help people evaluate, okay, what is that mindset that is coming up that you're dealing with? Is it fixed? Is it growth? Is it toxic? Is it healthy? What is that limiting belief that you're believing about yourself because of what someone else spoke about you or over you. That's preventing you and keeping you from having confidence that you can do this next thing. And there's these emotions come up, so we have to recognize them. We have to give voice to them.
Right.
And if we ignore them, we take all of that emotional baggage with us to that next place. So the transition's really giving you time to be aware of, why am I fearful? There's a root and a reason behind the way we behave, think, or feel. And so that's what it's all about. Okay, why am I feeling this? And try to get to the root of it so you can get strengthened. You can find healing for that part of you so that you go into that next place in wholeness and clarity.
I'm about to age myself a little bit, but and certainly I'm not bringing you along with me. You stay whatever age that you choose to stay in your mentally, and I'm going to just age myself here. But I think about as you describe kind of what you do and how you do it, and the process in which you do it, and the emotions that you connect to. I think about Lucy on the with Charlie Brown with the psychiatric visits 5 cents, sitting on the playground. When you were a younger person, a little girl in elementary school, or even a teenager, were you the one that people came to help resolve their problems because they just felt like you're the ear, you're the understander, or was this something that you learned later in life?
I think I've always been a good listener. And I think, as I was even going into a season of my life, becoming an empty nester, I felt called to be a life coach. And that's where I just began to study transitions and understand them and have that empathy to really listen, understand, and say, hey, this is something we can fix. We can get to the bottom of it.
I love that, I didn't realize until you just said the words life coach, I didn't realize that this is a part of the overall umbrella of what a life coach would do. And what I love about it is if somebody hears the word life coach, sometimes they go running in a million different directions away from the coach because they don't feel like they need a life coach. But you narrow down the subject matter and you call it, or you market it or brand it as, I'm a transition coach. It really is this. There's a lot of similarities between what a life coach would do and what somebody that is in the transition business would help with. But the way that you present it, again, makes it so that it's less fearful, less emotional, less intimidating for somebody to step into that those lessons that we need to learn. Do you find the same thing?
I do. I think once I can bring clarity to why a person's feeling the way they are, or help them understand why they keep shrinking back, they're now ready to embrace something new and different. And then they're exhilarated when they get to the other side. They're, why did I wait so long? And then they thrive. They thrive.
I think about the C-suite executive, male or female, that's going through the next stage in their life because they, let's say they either got laid off because the company has been acquired by another company, or the person that in 2008 loses 40% of their net worth because the stock market takes a crap on their portfolio, yeah. And that's a transition, or the unfortunate situation where somebody passes, or a divorce. But again, I want to go back to some of the transitions that we don't think of as transitions, like, okay, let's step into your new body. If you're on a diet and you've lost 75 pounds and now you have this new way of presenting yourself to the world, what do transitions look like to the average person looking out from the world into their crystal ball? Because they might see it only as death or moving, or some of the obvious things. Give us an example of what some of the transitions are that you work with.
There is such a variety of transitions, and that's why I think people miss the actual effect of transition in their life. So we have the classics like retirement or empty nester, but some of the ones that you were referring to, Doug, are like what I refer to are the sudden loss transitions. Mm-hmm. We can prepare, for retirement, but when you suddenly lose your job, when you suddenly get that diagnosis of your health that could be terminal, these are sudden loss transitions that we're not prepared for, we're blindsided by. And unfortunately, life is filled with a lot of those type of transitions. And so you find yourself asking your different questions. Who am I now? Where do I belong? How will I fit in? Because your norm has totally been shattered. It's different than when you're in a transition of, say, you're preparing for retirement or you're going to college. You just ask yourself, what's next?
Yeah.
Where do I go from here? And there is a whole process with that too. But that transition of loss, you should never navigate alone because it's so daunting, and the grief and everything that comes with it. You really need to have someone walk beside you to help you unpack where you're at and to realize that there's still hope on the other side of adversity. In fact, that's what I love about my guests that come on the podcast. I recently had a gentleman when he was 13 years old, unexpected explosion in his backyard that his entire body, 90% of his body had third-degree burns. He had 1% chance to live.
Wow.
And he not only learned to walk again and live, he played lacrosse again. He went collegiate as a coach. And now he globally goes around speaking to people about life after adversity.
Wow.
And you can get through something. And when I listen to people like that, it's so inspiring because even the most tragic times of transition, there is still, as long as you are still here on this earth, you still have a purpose and a reason why you're here. And I'm passionate about helping people not give up and look forward to what could potentially be there.
I hear over and over again the people that have overcome adversity, sudden blindness, or any health-related issue that they have, cancer or a heart issue or any type of disease, or really any number of different things that could happen to you on a sudden basis. And they say, while most people would see this as a curse, I look at this as a blessing in my life, because had that not happened, I would not have this purpose in my life at this point. And I do get so much inspiration from listening to those messages. But let's step back from that for just a second and talk to the people that are out there that are experiencing some sort of ache or emotional pain in their life, and they're just trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step for me, or what am I supposed to do in the next to process this. What are some of the symptoms that somebody might be experiencing if they're early on in the transition is calling me, but they don't recognize it phase yet? What are those symptoms, Debi?
Oh, there's some great symptoms, ones that we probably wouldn't even think about. So, conflict, interesting. Sometimes we stay longer in a career, in a relationship, longer than we should. And we've known for a long time we needed to make a change, but we don't. And conflict comes because that becomes the catalyst to move us out. Mm-hmm. So if you're experiencing some type of conflict, look at that situation. That conflict is actually a gift for you to realize it's time to move on. And I love nature. I go to this park, walk by the pond, it's filled with life. But then when the drought comes and you go by the pond, all nature has left. Right. Because even nature knows if I'm no longer being nourished, if I no longer have a life-giving surrounding, it's time to go. So we need to look at that too. Another one would be lack of passion. If you find yourself something that you've loved to do and now you could do it with your eyes closed and you've lost your passion, don't keep trying to stir that passion up, because that lack of passion is saying there is really something more. There's something different. You need to be challenged. Yeah. Transition wants to bring growth and development into your life. So don't try to, develop more passion for where you're at if it's because that lack of passion is telling you to move on. Another interesting one is burnout. And sometimes we think that is overworking, which it is, but you're in a time of making a decision, but you won't make the decision. You're too afraid to make the decision. Right. It's the bottom line is you don't trust yourself enough that you're going to make the right decision. So you're literally burned out from all the emotional exhaustion of not making the decision.
I see things like, I think of things as I'm going through a transition or trying to understand that I'm experiencing transition when I don't even realize it. Things like I may have a tough time sleeping at night, or I may lose my appetite, or I may overeat, or I may find myself binge watching Netflix or something like that. So there are some phases that I go through that I'm like, well, what isn't right in my life right now that is causing this? And I oftentimes will ask myself the question, what do I need more of? Or what am I lacking right now emotionally? Am I lacking safety? Am I lacking stability? Am I feeling like I'm not a voice? Am I not making an impact? I really enjoy making an impact. So am I not making an impact anymore? So there are so many things that I kind of physically go through, those physical challenges that I have, like the lack of sleep or just not feeling well or not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. And, even in a positive life that I have, I feel like sometimes I do go through some of that stuff, and that seems to be
Hmm.
those are pretty telltale signs, I would think, for transition also.
Absolutely. And you just reminded me 4 questions that you could ask yourself if you're in a situation and you're wondering is what is right? What is wrong? What is missing? And what is confusing? And answer those questions and it'll kind of give you some clarity to where you are.
I know that I want you to just a second and promote your book because there's a second book that I also want to promote, but I want to do you the lead in of the promotion too. But promote your book for just a second. So, what's the name of your book?
Oh, sure. It's called The Family Letter.
And give us a little
And
bit of a background on what the family letter is.
yes, actually, it's so interesting. When my husband and I, we were raising our children, we wanted to teach them the power of encouragement and the power of your words. So how do you take this huge concept and make it easy? And so we decided, let's use the simple tool of a letter. And on our birthdays, we would write letters to each other with the intent we would sit down as a family and one by one, each letter is read out loud so everyone hears it because that's where the power is in the community, not going to your room and reading it by yourself.
Right.
Well, we started this when our kids were little. We are about 38 years now, still doing the same tradition because, Doug, the bottom line, all of us had this longing in our soul to be known, loved, valued, and celebrated. And it comes through the power of words. And all of us walk around in life wondering, do I have value? Do I have worth? Well, we each have that answer for each other, and we need to express it. And that letter becomes that safe place. So I go around and speak a lot about this book, encouraging families to start, even individuals, simple letters. Telling someone what you love, value, and celebrate about them is a treasure, and you can literally change a person's life. So many people walk in doubt. So many people want to know if they're making a difference. And taking the time to write a letter to a mentor, to a friend who's been there, walked through trials with you, means the world to everyone.
Oh, I
In
love
fact,
that.
this book has gone, the letters, my grandchildren now, when my grandson was 7, he said, Nana, do you know what I want for my birthday? And I said, no, Kellen, what would you like? He literally threw his arms over his head and said, letters. I want letters because he grew up watching everyone else in the family getting them.
Oh
And
my
so now
gosh.
even my grandchildren are writing letters and receiving them. So it's become a generational thing for us to do. It's so powerful.
So powerful and so great. And I did not realize that maybe I did when we originally started promoting this years ago, but I did not realize that was what the book was about. And, there's never a too late to start that.
So
Even if you're
true.
a grandmother and you want to start it for your grandkids, or if you're just a single person, it's never too early to start it either. Just write letters of appreciation to those that are close to you in your life, your parents, your mentors, the people that have meant so much to you. Very, very cool. And I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes. Actually, I think on your website, towards the bottom of the homepage, you have access whether you want to get a copy directly on Amazon or you want Debbie to autograph a copy of the book. You can go right to her website to get that as well. Let's talk just for a quick second about the podcast before we wrap up, Debbie. So you've been doing this for 160 some odd episodes or so. You've made all sorts of connections with people that have sat in the guest seat and in your audience. I always like to ask this question as somebody, especially a client of mine, because it's really hard when you're telling people about podcasting in the very early stages that it's more than just building a community of listeners and building a guest seat that is sharing information. There are so many hidden gifts that you get from podcasting. I'm really curious what the hidden gift that you have gotten out of your podcast, whether it's relationships that you've built, business that you've been able to get. Is there something that has been a hidden gift to you that you did not have any idea that you were going to get when you started the show?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the first gifts for anybody who challenges themselves to do something that they've never done before, and you do it and it becomes successful, there is such a satisfaction and fulfillment to know anything's possible. So take a risk and do that. So that was the first gift for me personally, that I thought about this and I thought, I'm going to take the challenge and be consistent as you shared with me to do. And it's paid off so much. And I have built relationships with people around the world. And we find we have a kindred spirit, and we can help one another with our own businesses. I find people who are doing things that I may need for my clients that I may not have in my wheelhouse, but now I can refer them out, and they do the same for me. And so it's relationships, and it's also helped my business.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I feel the same thing. You know, we've had the show now for 10 years. Next month will be 10 years, which is crazy to think, 15 or 1,600 episodes. It's just amazing to be able to think about the impact that it's had. I'm going to be selfish for a moment. The impact that it's had on my life, forget everything else. It has been great. And it has been a deep feeling of accomplishment for me, as I'm sure it is for you as well. We'll put a link in the show notes again. I know it's on your website, and you have a tab on your site for access to your podcast as well. What am I not asking you, Debbie, that we should be sharing with our audience of Nice Guy community members?
Well, I do have a course that I wrote for anybody who is wondering about what a transition is. The course is called Your Story's Changing, Finding the Purpose and Power in Transition. And there will be a link on my website, and I may have one for your show notes as well. And you can take this course on your own, or you can also take it and have coaching with me as you take the course. So excellent. I highly recommend it.
Excellent. And I highly recommend anything that Debbie has her hands on. I would absolutely recommend that you take advantage of that Nice Guy community. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for your return visit to Nice Guys on Business. And thanks for your flexibility. I think we originally had this scheduled to record on New Year's Eve. And I'm like, why did I have that even open on my schedule? But it was open. The higher power said, you need to work on New Year's Eve. And I'm like, I can't. It's time to move on. So thank you for your flexibility in scheduling this.
Oh, you are so welcome. And thank you so much for the honor and the opportunity to be here, Doug. I love being connected with you.
My pleasure. I feel the same. And Nice Guy community, thanks again for tuning in another episode. Never underestimate the power of nice, or the power of recognizing how you are, or maybe you are going through a transition yourself. Reach out to Debbie directly. We'll make sure we put all the access and information right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Don't underestimate the power of nice.